Are you wondering what to consider when buying your first investment home? I'm also looking for my first investment home and want to share my considerations while looking for a good location for long-term rental property. Also, stick around until the end where I share an awesome study of the 30 best locations to buy a long-term rental investment property in 2023. I'll also be sharing my top 3 locations and why I think they are the best. So for those of you that are new to the channel, I'm Dallin Wardrop and this is Creating Cash Flow. Creating Cash Flow is my show where I take my real estate and my overall portfolio from $0 in monthly passive income to $1 million in monthly passive income. I share my story, my learnings, my wins, my losses, so be sure to go check out my other videos and welcome to the show. So first and foremost, I've narrowed this list down to the US. I'm specifically looking for US investments, and so I won't be looking or talking about anything outside of the US. Also, I'm doing research based on where I am at in my life, where I'm at financially, and what type of investments will work best for me. So that's a quick disclaimer. Everyone could be at different stages of their investment journey. We talked about that actually in the last video where I talked about a $50 million real estate investor and kind of what they think about how to invest in properties based on when you're in your 20s versus your 30s versus when you're in your 50s and 60s and later on in life. So right now, I'm specifically looking at properties and locations that suit me and what I'm trying to do as a beginner, complete noob to the real estate world. So with that being said, I found myself bouncing between tons of different states, everything from Utah to Idaho, Delaware, New Hampshire, Florida. I found myself looking all over the place, and I haven't really been able to narrow down on one specific state and city. So while I've been looking and doing a bunch of research, I found a pretty helpful article by Jeff Rode, which I'll add in the comments down below. But he talks about 8 things to consider, and I really like them. And he actually then shows you the top 30 that he's broken into. So that'll be in the comments. Go check it out. It's a pretty good article. But the 8 things he brings up and considers while looking at the different states and the different cities is first, home value, median rent amount, the 1-year price growth, 1-year rent growth, job growth, population, just overall population growth over a 1-year period over the past year, and population growth over the past 10 years. So those are a few of the things that he uses to be looking at different locations for investments. And once you kind of choose those, you can get more granular. So on the more granular level, I'm looking at a neighborhood with good schools. I think that's super important when buying a rental property, especially if you want it to appreciate. But I read this from better.com. It said, remember that you're not just buying a house, you are investing in a neighborhood, which I thought that was really, really cool because another nod to my last video, the investor that has over $50 million invested in real estate said that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's true in real estate. So if you are in a good neighborhood and you have a good school zone and the overall neighborhood and the area continues to appreciate, your home value will also continue to appreciate. So basically find a neighborhood that has access to good schools. The next is almost similar to that one, and it kind of rolls off the first point, but it's find well-kept homes and yards. And this is primarily something that I'm interested in because I want to find renters. I want to find the types of renters that will appreciate a good home and a nice yard, and where other neighbors have a nice home and a nice yard. I think there will be something to that where there's more of an ownership, and the renter hopefully will be able to take good care of my property, and they'll also want to stay in it for longer. I don't want to have to flip a long-term renter every year and then have to fix up a home that was absolutely destroyed. So I think that if we find a well-kept home, well-kept yard in a good neighborhood, then hopefully that will attract the type of renter that won't be so high maintenance in the terms of flipping through often. They may not want to do any of the fixing up of a home, so there might be some more property management work, but I would rather deal with that than trying to find new renters and fixing the house, like completely turning over the house. So that's just an assumption of mine. I don't actually know, but that's where my head's at right now. The next is lots of great jobs within 1 hour drive. So I already brought up job growth at the broad level, but not only job growth, how the proximity to those jobs. So if you're in between two big cities and you can potentially commute to either, that would be a great place. The closer you can be to where the jobs are, the better. People don't like commuting, and a lot of people are working hybrid now, which means that people are more and more often, I'm hearing about people being required to go into the office, even if it's just for 2 days or 3 days a week. But the proximity to the good jobs is extremely helpful. The next is low crime rates, and I know I won't be the one living in the home, most likely, but someone will need to live there. And so I would rather just stay away, as far away as possible, from violent crimes and property crimes where I don't have to deal with burglaries and things like that. That sounds like a headache, but I would overall love to stay away from high crime rate areas. The next is past appreciation. And what the past appreciation has looked like, because that can be a great indicator for future appreciation. That's not always the case. Obviously, you could find somewhere that hasn't appreciated much but is starting to boom, and there's a lot of excitement in that area, and you can predict potentially better future appreciation than you've seen in the past. But largely, towns that have been appreciating at a pretty steady clip over the past 5-10 years may continue to do that as you see population growing and all of that. But I think that's something that you'll want to be looking at as you're looking for appreciation. The next is budget and how much do you want to spend. So not only how much you want to spend, but how much of the loan, how much of a loan do you want to be able to take on, and will the rent cover the mortgage? Obviously that's going to be critical as we're looking at someone else to be paying off the mortgage, while hopefully also producing a little bit of cash flow on top that can benefit me now. I personally don't want to take on a big loan. I would rather take on a smaller loan and pay off the house as quickly as possible. So another thing to look at when you're looking at specific areas are other fees and fee history. So is the property in an HOA, property tax, insurance? What do those extra fees look like? And what do they look like over time? Does it kind of stay stable, or do you see property tax increasing? Because that's going to go into your bottom line, and potentially you'll have to either raise rent or figure out something there. But that's something else that is worth looking into. So as I mentioned, the past 2 to 3 weeks, I've been wasting so much time looking at Zillow and Realtor.com, just trying to find good deals, and it's really hard. But I'm sure you're going through that same thing. And that's when I came across the article that I already mentioned, and he gave 30 interesting markets to be invested in, and I will share those quickly with you right now. So if you're listening to this, you can just hear it, and we won't dive into any of the details. But Albuquerque, New Mexico, Arlington, Texas, Atlanta, Birmingham, Alabama, Boise, Idaho, Charlotte, North Carolina, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Ohio, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Columbia, South Carolina, Columbus, Ohio, Dallas, Texas, Des Moines, Iowa, Detroit, Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Greenville, South Carolina, Houston, Huntsville, Alabama, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Florida, KCMO, Memphis, Tennessee, Orlando, Florida, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Raleigh, North Carolina, Salt Lake City, Utah, San Antonio, Texas, Seattle, St. Petersburg, Florida, and Tampa, Florida. So those are the 30 that are listed. And while the 30 that are listed are very interesting, and there's a lot of data to back, or those 8 data points on each of those to back why those are a great investment, I still think that 30 is a lot of locations to have to really narrow in on. So based on the numbers that were provided, I started looking at population growth over the past year and over the past 10 years. I found that to be a very interesting indicator for me to be able to see, is this place growing? Is it exciting? Are there going to be people moving in trying to rent? And so kind of just eyeballing it, I set some arbitrary restraints of I wanted to only see the cities that had a 1.5 population growth percent or higher over the past year, and a 15% growth over the past 10 years in the population. So 1.5% growth over the past year and a 10% growth or a 15% growth or more over the past 10 years. So that narrowed it down to Atlanta, Charlotte, North Carolina, Columbus, Ohio, Greenville, South Carolina, Huntsville, Alabama, and Tampa. So now I've shrunk the list a little bit tighter, which is pretty helpful. And then I wanted to say, okay, based on the population growth, is the job rate is the job growth rate growing as rapidly? And so I set another arbitrary restraint based on kind of eyeballing all of these locations at 3%. So I wanted a 3% increase in jobs in that particular area, which that narrows it down to Charlotte, North Carolina, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Columbus, Ohio, Detroit, Michigan, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Salt Lake City, Utah, San Antonio, Texas, and Tampa. So then I looked at the overlap here, and that broke it into 2 markets only, which is Charlotte, North Carolina, and Columbus, Ohio. So from here, if you've heard of the 2% rule, I wanted to apply the 2% rule to these 2 locations based on the numbers provided. I didn't go into like Zillow and actually try and find homes specifically that potentially beat the 2% rule. I wanted to look at it from an averaging perspective, since that's how I'm looking at the rest of these numbers. So I applied the 2% rule to both of these cities, and Charlotte, North Carolina came in at 0.5%, and Columbus, Ohio came in just over 0.5%. So neither of these were even close really to passing off a 1% rule, and I'm not going to live and die by the 2% rule. Apparently you're not supposed to do that, but it makes a lot of sense to me, and it seems like it would be a really good indicator for rental properties. So with that being said, neither of these 2 passed the 2% rule or even came close. So I was wondering if any of the other ones would pass the 2% rule. So coming in here, Atlanta, 0.5% no. Greenville, South Carolina, 0.5% no. Alabama, no. Tampa, no. Colorado Springs, no, less than 0.5%. Salt Lake City, less than 0.5%. San Antonio, Texas, just over 0.5%. Same with Tampa and Pittsburgh. So none of them even came close, except for Detroit. Detroit came in at 1.7% on average, which is by far the closest one to 2%. So I found that to be really, really interesting. So as of right now, based on the research in this article and other research I've done, especially getting more granular, I'm getting pretty excited about Detroit as a market, Columbus, Ohio as a market, and Charlotte, North Carolina as a market. So none of them are perfect, and I'm sure there's deals in every single market, but I'm pretty interested in all of these markets. Also, with a little bit more research, I found that Detroit just bumped up 13 places to the #1 spot in emerging tech markets. So there's a lot of investment money and a lot of tech that's moving towards Detroit. Of the companies that I know over there, I know that StockX is over there. Besides that, I don't know much, but it's pretty exciting to see that the home values in Detroit are so low, and the rent is pretty close to reaching the 2% rule, and a lot of tech and excitement is moving in that direction as of today. So I think that's a pretty interesting market to look into. And yeah, that's pretty much what I have for today. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, be sure to ask them, let me know. I also would appreciate feedback if there's anything that I should be thinking about when looking at the broad picture of state and city versus the more granular, and what you're thinking about as you're looking for your first investment property. I would love to hear that. I read the comments, love to answer them, And if you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that like button. I really appreciate it. And follow along. So with that being said, remember that the mind is a powerful thing, so stay focused on your goals, go after what you want, and stay grounded in gratitude. See ya.